guys? Welcome to another episode of the Meaning Of Podcast. I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And this episode, we're going to be talking about John Carpenter, and we are joined by a very special guest.
Whoa.
And that is Mr. Christian Ruvalcaba.
Hi guys, how you doing? Thank you so
Thanks
much
for being
having me.
on,
Oh
man.
my god, the applause, the audience, calm down.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much. Big fan of you too.
Thanks,
what is
man.
it? I've been meaning to ask you. What does it all mean?
Ooh.
What does it mean?
That's too deep. Not playing.
No. What's the meaning of the meaning of?
Ooh, what do you guys mean? By
I told RB3, I was like, the meaning of podcast.
I also hope Cody didn't make that joke either. He didn't make that joke
he
when
didn't
he
make
came on
that
this
joke,
program?
no.
Yes. As if that was a good one to
But-
keep in my back pocket.
Either way, man, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
It's October. It's Halloween season.
Yeah.
And what better person to talk about
Yeah.
than the man himself?
Yeah, we're going to do that on this episode. But before we do that, we're going to get into the YouTube comments from last week's episode.
Shit.
Yeah.
Where we talked about Michael Mann.
I actually read them this week. I read them
You
this week.
read them?
I read
Okay.
them ahead of time this week.
Okay, RB3.
Yeah.
I was going to say, aren't you like anti-comments?
Yeah, I usually am, but I think this week I felt safe. Felt safe.
First one is Teria I'm bad at names. Kamunga says he is probably the most popular Michael Mann film. To this day, filmmakers are inspired by this film. Dark Knight Rises, The Town, Den of Thieves.
Yeah.
Interesting, Den of Thieves.
Thanks for pulling that one out. Is that the one with Gerard Butler?
Gerard Butler.
Oh, yeah.
And,
The rapper was some rapper was in it too, right?
isn't
Chance.
it? No, it's not
Chance.
Chance.
Chance,
It's who was it?
I don't know. Oh, 50 Cent.
Oh, 50 Cent. Yeah,
50
yeah.
Cent.
50.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
There you go. Are you a fan of Den of Thieves, RB3?
Kidding me? I haven't seen that one.
But yeah, we were talking about Michael Mann, and
yeah.
we were trying to figure out like what's his most impactful and most biggest film, probably popular film. And
I would imagine
Heat.
Yeah. When's the last time he's made a decent movie?
Black Hat. No,
Stop it.
hashtag Black Hat.
I heard the director's cut was pretty good.
Okay, I'm director's cut cool. Whatever.
But did you see Black Hat? Or?
No.
I don't think it's.
It's a white hat. No.
That's the kind of movies we watch in
every
my
other movie,
house.
Yeah.
Oh man. CJ Stevenson says, I think morality is a big part of his films. Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, he's getting deep with us. All right.
Hey man, that's what we do in this podcast. RB3, we get deep.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Talking about Natalie Portman on that last week's episode.
Wait.
Getting
Maybe that's
deep,
what he
Natalie
said.
Portman. What? Young man.
I know. That's what we were talking about. Zohair286, and this will be the last one, says, The Insider is my favorite film. Surprised you didn't talk much about it. He's
Yeah.
calling out Shoe RB3.
Wait,
In parentheses,
you
he's
calling out
got...
me? What the fuck? No. I apologize. I usually try to keep up, and I literally went on every platform. I was like, HBO, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, Insider was nowhere to be found. So I did peep all those comments about our Coppola month idea, man.
Oh, yeah. I skipped all those.
Oh, man, we gotta do that, man. I proposed the Coppola month. I think this would be a good idea if we do. I think one comment kind of like had it summarized, and I think this would be like maxed out. Week 1, the Godfather trilogy.
Sure.
Week 2, like the rest of Francis Ford Coppola. Week
That's a lot.
3, Sofia Coppola.
Okay.
Week 4, Nick Cage. Coppola. That's the
You lost
Yeah,
Nick
yeah.
Cage. No,
I'm
That's
telling
how you gotta cap
Yeah.
it off, right?
Yeah,
there.
that's the way I topped it off.
Nick Cage films, man. That would be our first actor episode, right?
Yeah, I think
We've
so,
never
yeah.
done an actor episode.
I mean, we could do like Roman Coppola, I guess, too.
Oh, yeah, we
somebody
can.
suggested that, or even like Wes Anderson is not like a Coppola, but is related to a lot of movies are related to a lot of Coppola people. So
All right, let's get into this week's episode, which is all about John Carpenter. But before we do that, we're going to get into our in-studio guest, and that is Copster.
Hi.
Sure.
What's up, guys?
Thank you once again for coming on.
Of course.
Yeah, a brief history between Copster. I mean, we met through the Schmoes,
Yeah.
which is a lot of fun.
Fucking schmoes. God damn it, those schmoes.
Can you believe it's been so long, man?
Yeah, when did you, so you first join? I joined in 2013. You joined, I want to say, 2015 or 2016.
It was January 2015.
2015. Okay.
Because 2014, November 2014, or was it October 2014? Is when I was at Kamikaze and I met you guys.
That's right. Okay, yeah,
That was
yeah.
2014, and then almost end of the year, you messaged me.
Yes. Yeah.
And then by the next year, we met up, and that's how I got on the Schmells, 2015.
Did we meet at a Starbucks?
No, it was. I think we met at. Was it the Arc Lights? right outside the
We
ArcLight?
did. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, I do remember. Because I remember that day, and specifically I met, I believe, another person
Oh, no way.
who kind of didn't really know the show that much.
Oh,
I think he
okay.
like heard it in passing and just saw an
Interesting.
opportunity.
Yeah.
But nice guy. He really
Yeah.
was. But you were much more qualified. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Dang.
You were, I'm like, when I told Christian, I was like, this guy's pretty smart. This guy can talk. Like he's a pretty good talker. I think
can
he's a
definitely
good
talk,
fit.
that's for sure.
We need someone like this on the show.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
we brought
thanks,
you
man.
on. I mean, to be fair, you didn't join it by you didn't come to the interview dressed in a suit.
I didn't.
But
That's
fucking show off. This
Let's get
fucking
into
guy.
him. You came dressed in a suit, RB3.
Yeah, I mean,
To Barney's Beanery.
Hey, Barney's Beanery. Hey, I didn't know what kind of occasion we would be
true.
rocking with. So
Yeah,
no, it was dope. I mean, I was just super nervous, like meeting like everybody for the first time.
Yeah,
So.
and that was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2016.
So
Yeah.
back to back, you guys.
That's great, man.
Great
Same
times.
day that Prince died was the day that
Okay,
we got.
okay.
Oh,
yeah.
dang.
Damn, dude.
You got to
Yeah,
bring
so
down
it's-
the mood, RB3.
Yeah, we were living a high, but now we're just.
Nah, I just will never forget that day, man.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
it
It's a great
That was
day.
a great day and a bad day. In a weird
It's a great
way.
day for me, not for the family of Prince.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yikes.
Yikes. R.I.P.
But
One
either
of the
way,
greats.
Greatest.
you were a fan of the Schmoes beforehand too,
Yes.
right? And you
Mhm.
listened to the movie podcast, and you were trying to do your own thing like on YouTube, right?
Yeah, I was doing
like movie
my
reviews.
I was doing my own shitty reviews. They're not good. They were so bad.
But you're from this area, right? Are you from
No,
LA
I'm
area?
from like L.A. County / Orange County, like
Okay.
border. It's a small little town called La Mirada. It's next
Okay.
to Fullerton. A lot of people know where Fullerton's at. And my small little neighborhood, we were far away from freeways. Open road. Like it was great. Now I live in the size of this room is like the side of like a street, both going opposite ways on the fucking street. It's awful.
True.
But I eventually just kind of moved my way out here.
Cool.
I'm a regular do-it-yourself kind of guy.
Was it your plan all along to?
That wasn't meant to be sexual, but
Was it your plan all along to come out to LA and
Not-
kind of get into the industry?
not really.
Okay.
I kind of jumped into it and I started doing reviews because nobody else wanted to talk about movies with me, and I kind of always felt alone on that side. And to this day, I still kind of do, even though I have people that I work with. It's people aren't on the same level as me when I want to talk about a movie. I'll talk someone's ear off all the time about a movie, and I'll go in through one and out the other. But now it's like we're part of this whole collective community that everyone is kind of part of that, and it's really nice. And so when I just started doing videos, I kind of did it for the hell of it because I wanted to have an outlet. And then contacted JTE. I started listening to a podcast. I don't know what the hell a podcast was. I always heard about it. I always saw it on the phone. I'm like, this podcast is just stupid. And then it just kind of slowly got into it. And then through all that, I kind of found the creative outlet of making short films and shit. And I really
Nice.
fell in love with that.
That's great,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
And right now you're producing the Collider Live, and you're
Yes.
also an editor for Collider.
Correct.
But what is your ultimate goal? Is it to be director, producer?
Just directing, producing, writing, anything that I can do
Okay.
to create, my own creative stuff. I think when you first, get into it, you're going to film school and you're like, I want to be a director in Hollywood. You kind of have that mindset. And I think a lot of people have that mindset, but kind of, I don't know. I hate to say working on this side of the industry sort of dampened, I don't know, it kind of not ruined it, but it tainted it for sure, because you hear all the horror stories of everything that's going on, even just the monster human beings that are in Hollywood in general and everything that's going on.
ghouls.
Yeah, exactly. Just that stuff alone is all right, I don't know if I want to do this. But then you hear stories about filmmakers and reshoots and not getting their own vision. It's I don't know if I could ever, because when you deal with criticism, it's such a hard thing to do, especially working at Collider. It's when you have a project, you're so passionate about it, then there's so many voices coming in, you lose that sense of joy and wonder. And so I like it better when it's just me, Brian, Cody, or if it's just us, just smaller voices, and because we're all on the same page. I think a lot of the time in these areas, it's not everybody's going to be on the same page because everyone's got a voice. I don't think everybody deserves to have a voice. I know free speech is a big thing,
Yeah.
but I think some people should just keep their mouths shut.
Yeah.
So really, the future is I honestly don't care what I'm doing as long as I'm still able to make my own stuff on the side. I can direct on the side, I can write on the side, and do podcasts on the side. That's all, because that's the ultimate goal. The fact that people watch us, even if it I never got an extreme amount of views when I did my movie reviews. The fact that my views would crack 100 views, I'm like, fuck yeah, cool. And then now that we're doing like Patreon, it's like views don't matter to me. Like people are paying to watch some of the things that we're doing. And it's Cody calls it like a fun ligation, like it's a fun obligation, and it's like we're working towards something. You know, we're not just having people pay us just because like we're taking their money. It's like no, we're working regular jobs as is throughout the week, but then we're also working on Saturdays to do a podcast, to do commentaries, to do creative and fun, entertaining things, and it takes a lot of effort and time, but it's because we love to do it.
And it's definitely something that you don't want to let go, right? You don't want to kind of stay in the lane that you're in right now and kind of be on the media side of film versus actually creating.
Right. No, it's more so creating. Like I've lost the desire to critique, review any kind of movie.
Be like a full-time film critic.
Yeah, like no, thank you. No, because it's just over time, and we know a lot of film critics, and a lot of them are great, and a lot of them are just like, oh, really? Like it's a movie at the end of the day, and I know we can all be nitpicky with movies, and it's just at the end of the day, I just want to have fun watching a movie.
Sure.
I want to feel what I felt when I was younger, and it's hard to feel like that. So further away from the criticism, even though I think Twitter's a great outlet for that for the most part. So I kind of just keep that, when it's weird when people like look at your opinion as something and like they comment on it and it becomes this huge thing, if you like a Star Wars movie, if you don't like a Star Wars movie, like people fucking lose their minds over the smallest, tiniest little things, and, but that's, at the end of the day, that's kind of part of the fun. I like keeping the conversation going, civil, but if it keeps going and everyone can be friends at the end of the day, then, hey, that was a good day. Yeah. Don't be assholes online. Just don't be mean. Don't be respectful to people. How about that?
Shout out to our 20 listeners, right?
Shout out to all of them. All of you fucking respectful human beings that are watching this show. You guys are all respect. You guys are awesome.
I was gonna say we have like the nicest. I think our very small. Listen, you gotta stop downplaying the fans.
I know.
Our iTunes viewers are good people.
Yeah, they're pretty good, man. They gotta be if they're listening to us, man.
Yeah. No, we say some stupid shit on there.
Yeah, I was gonna say
thanks for tolerating us.
We say controversial stuff all the time, and I don't shy away from it. Like RB3,
you shouldn't have to.
A little bit. He's like, bro, don't tie me into this, and I'm like, let's talk Shane Black and sexual assault, and he's like, bro, let's not.
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of things you need to talk about because people are incredibly sensitive about everything, and one tiny little thing out of context has ruined people's careers, and it's just like, let's take the time, let's dissect it, let's see what's going on, and let's be smart about our decision making process, you know, and just don't be a scumbag, you know, be a good person. You met a lot of scumbags. I've met a lot of scumbags in my time, and it's just, be a good human being.
Yeah. Now getting back to the episode, RB3 and I both kind of agreed to get obviously you three, Cody. You and
Brian's
Brian.
the last one.
Oh, yeah. He's getting an episode though. Eventually, we're gonna ask him, and hopefully he'll say yes.
I don't know what it.
But that's the thing, right? When we saw Cody, and Cody came up to me and talked about Spike Jonze, and he talked about Spike Jonze to RB3, and then RB3. When we thought of you, we thought John Carpenter.
Yes,
and we thought that was a fair assessment. Hopefully, we're right, but we're like John Carpenter.
You made a whole fan film.
I'm kind of a big fan. Yeah. I haven't seen. Granted, I haven't seen every single one of John Carpenter's films. Which there's a couple in there that maybe if there's hardcore John Carpenter fans that were like, oh, you definitely should see this movie. I did watch one recently that I had never seen before that we'll get into eventually. But he's one of my favorites. He's got such he's got the known staple as like a horror director, but I think he breaches out of it just a little bit more because his film range is it's incredible. It's not just horror.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think he does great comedy. I think he does great sci-fi. So
yeah. And what's your personal connection to him? Because I like talking about directors because RB3 mentioned it last week that a lot of our favorite directors are directors that we have some sort of like memory of. It could be a childhood memory or it could be like a young adult memory, but it's still like some sort of personal connection to his films.
Yeah, it's mostly like his music. It's his music, and obviously the first Halloween. I think that's probably the biggest connection because when I was younger, growing up, scary movies were not my thing. Like I hated scary only because they scared the shit out of me. I remember because I didn't have an older brother, but I had an older cousin, and I'd always hear him kind of taunt me about certain scary movies and whatnot. And something like Halloween, I had heard about it. It was weird because like scary movies to me were almost like urban legends. I would hear about this man in a mask that stalked people. I'm like, wait, that sounds scary. And I remember the very first scene I ever saw in Halloween. It was Laurie and I think Annie. I think it was Laurie and Annie were driving and they're like smoking weed, and then they pull over to a shop where Annie's father, who plays the sheriff, who is the sheriff rather, and he says, "Oh, it's no big deal. A couple kids broke in, stole some dimes and a mask." And it's just like I heard that, I'm like, "Fuck, was that him?" Like, shit, was that him? I'm like, turn it off. And then, like, for the longest time, I never watched horror films. And it wasn't until, like, maybe like when I was 12, maybe, when I first started getting into them. And then when I eventually watched Halloween and fully kind of just realized what this movie was about, and kind of just, not even so much just the filmmaking aspect of it, just the storytelling in general, just really, really like struck a chord into me, and it spiraled into me going deeper into the franchise. Where, because I remember specifically the AMC like 13 Nights of Horror. I think now they do like 31, which is great.
Yeah, 31. Yeah.
That's when I like binged all those, because they would play every single Halloween film, and I remember just watching them back to back to back, like boom, 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 and just like, whoa, like these are like, this is a new type of genre that is just for me. Like, it gets me in ways that no other genre does. And it all started with Halloween, and it's all because of that. It's the atmosphere, the music, the acting. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis was someone who I adored growing up, because of, like, we're a much younger crowd. We're younger than you. Freaky Friday, like, obviously, it's like, what's up. But not to say that I saw Freaky Friday before I saw Halloween, but, and then you find out all the other horror films that Jamie Lee Curtis did, and then when I saw The Thing, that was just like a whoa, like, what is this? So, but it comes down to Halloween.
Yeah, and it all comes to form some sort of inspiration as far as your own filmmaking,
yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah, especially that movie, because we actually just rewatched Halloween for a commentary, and there's so many beautiful just long shots. There's just shots where Dean Cundy, who's the cinematographer for that, he's done an immense amount of great work. He just lingers on shots for the longest time, and that for me was very inspirational, like way later on, because it's almost like a great indie film technique. There's not a lot of cuts. It's just, let's get this one take. If it doesn't come out okay in the sound booth, then we can do some ADR, and we'll do that. Just a lot of long, simple shots of people just walking in the streets, kind of developing a little bit of exposition behind the characters themselves that I thought were just really inspiring. And it's a movie that he allows the characters and all the actions kind of just to slowly build and take its time. And I very much appreciate, because we don't get that a lot in horror films these days. A lot of the time, it's just boom, you get it right after it. Granted, Michael Myers as a kid kills his sister in the first 5 minutes of the film, but it's that initial build-up and that slow intake that you get to that moment. Whereas, like, you see something like The Nun, and it's just right away. Like, I haven't seen The Nun, to be fair, but that's just like the shtick with horror films now,
Sure.
and people don't latch onto that because they don't like seeing the same shit over and over.
Yeah, and they want to be like, audiences now want to be constantly scared.
Yes.
Versus actually build character and build emotional connection to the character.
Right. And I think Halloween does a great mixture of the two. It's an eerie kind of scared, as opposed to like, oh yeah, that was a loud noise that freaked me out. Let's all giggle and wait for the next one. No, it's more like, fuck. Did I just see him stand over there in the corner, or was that messing with me? Because he's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Is the movie playing tricks on me? And I think that's really, really smart. I always connect it to something like a figure in a background somewhere. You can barely just see it. Yeah. And so that always gets to me. I always love that shit.
And I think it's funny that, especially with a movie like Halloween, it's such a genre piece that defined an entire slasher, genre to proceed after.
Yeah. It basically created the slasher genre.
It created this, but it's funny how like a lot of the slasher movies after Halloween don't really take those elements. They just take the violent, the silly, like not silly, but the over the top action that Halloween presented, but they don't look at the quieter. And I think that's where a lot of people don't, I guess, acclaim Halloween to the highest. You know what I mean? I mean, people love Halloween, obviously, but it's not. I think if people understood what the filmmaking and the intent was really behind what John Carpenter was doing back in the day, it should be recognized one of like the greatest.
And we're still seeing that issue today. You're still seeing like, you have something like, regardless of how big or controversial or however, whatever John Carpenter was at that time, that was like a known filmmaker. At least now he's a known filmmaker making something that he was passionate about. And it's like, how often do we get that? Okay, James Wan. great example. It's like this is someone who loves the genre and takes the time to like give us actual characters and story to be invested in it, and that's why we're scared. We're scared because we know who these characters are and we get into it. Now it's just I think this is a great time for horror because we're getting a lot more filmmakers that are fans of the genre. But I think John Carpenter is one of those ones. Because this was even before The Shining. It's like you have someone who loves this genre, who has a passion for it, and created something so scary and so eerie that, you know, till this day people are still inspired by it. And it created all these slasher films that came afterwards because that was just the quick Hollywood thing to do. It's like, wow, this movie was made for such a small amount of money, and look how good it did. Let's do the same thing, but let's just whip them out like crazy. That's why Friday the 13th sucks. It's not a good movie.
Yeah, I don't think
I love it. I love Friday the 13th movies. I do, but it's just so quick and poopy.
Yeah,
it really is.
We'll definitely get into a little bit more of what Carpenter inspired and just the horror today, what horror has become today. But let's get a little bit into John Carpenter, the man, because I'm kind of obsessed with. I mean, obviously, this whole podcast is about getting into the directors, right? It's a very self-absorbed, and by self-absorbed, I mean we're praising the crap out of old white men. But that's kind of the point of this podcast, so I'm going to keep doing that. And it's interesting with the horror genre, RB3. I don't know if you're with me on this, because every director we've done, obviously some of them have twisted movies like Darren Aronofsky, but all of them are trying to be, I don't know, they have a certain range of what they're trying to accomplish. But with Carpenter, at least what I've seen is seeing all his movies, and it's one of those things, right? Like binging Aronofsky kind of hurt me, and it hurt my brain and my soul. Binging Carpenter also kind of hurt me in a different way, and it also made me question Carpenter the man. But obviously, he grew up in Kentucky. He loved movies. I think the movie that he said inspired him the most was Invaders of Outer Space, something like that.
Right,
super old-timey.
But that's what he was in. He loved those 1950s like sci-fi movies. That's what
the sci-fi movies and the Tales from the Crypt and Weird Science, like those kind of books and comics and novels are what inspired him. But also, we can't. What I'm realizing is that Hollywood is essentially built around these men: George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola, John Carpenter, Steven Spielberg. All these guys who are in some sort of way inspiring a counterculture movement, because that's what it is, man. I mean, at the end of the day, these are just a bunch of hippies, because that's what it is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's interesting to see that, because Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and some other guy, Coppola, all made kind of like either war movies or like feel-good movies or like kid movies or outer space movies, whereas Carpenter really focused on the disturbed, the deranged, the twisted, which was very much against the traditional 1950s, everyone's nice and, dressed up and everyone's nice and conservative.
Right.
And he wanted to go almost like anti-conservative and just push the bar and push the limit to it. And I find that interesting because, to be honest, again, watching all those movies, you're like, yo, you got to have something wrong in your head if you're coming up with all this shit, man.
And also, I think it's like it calls to him for being like a true artist, because he's also a musician. He can dive deep into like a different place that a lot of people I don't think can get to. Maybe it's just him smoking weed and getting to the mood or something like that. But it shows in his filmmaking, because they play so well with each other, the music and his movies together.
Yeah, I mean, he came straight out of a rock band, and it's kind of that punk rock counterculture.
Oh yeah,
rock
a lot
band.
of his music is especially there's a later one in his work that I'll get into.
Yeah,
that was a big one of mine, but it's total fucking metal.
And going from that to making movies.
Well, also, I was going to say, I think what especially distincts Carpenter out of that generation is, we talk about Spielberg, Lucas, and, John Carpenter also went to USC, so he's a SC alum. I got
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
But there's a pattern, right? These are all people who love movies. And especially during the time, especially in the 70s, 60s, that was a generation of filmmakers that were coming from being that was the first generation of filmmakers to come from TV, right? Like that was the first generation of filmmakers to have had TV in their existence. But then, so that's what a lot of the contemporaries of 60s and 70s were. But then the people who stood out, the Spielbergs, the Lucases, the Francis Ford Coppolas, the Carpenters, were the people who kind of like rejected TV to a certain extent, like who kind of like actively. And then, we're going to talk about They Live. That's a very anti-TV movie. Oh yeah, and I think that's very reflective of how John Carpenter feels. And then I think that's why Halloween has such a distinctive feel as a horror movie because it's both a horror slasher movie, but it takes, when you talk about the long shots, just the pacing, it feels more of like a classical old, like 1930s, 40s, 50s, like classical movie than it does like an actual, what we would perceive as the idea of horror slasher today,
And it's interesting because horror movies essentially were created to be a reflection or a criticism on what the society was originally doing, right? I mean, a lot of that's how zombie movies got started as well.
Right.
It's the whole idea of like, let's reflect, same with sci-fi. It's like the idea of talking about stuff like racism, talking about capitalism, talking about authority, talking about certain things that people want to kind of rebel against, and something that America was going into quite a bit, especially with Nixon, especially with Reagan, was that when people
distrust
against what's happening now, and that's kind of what we were saying beforehand about talking about why we're such a controversial podcast, because a lot of people don't want to talk about the political aspects, but RB3 and I fully embrace it, because at the end of the day, Spielberg, Lucas, Carpenter are all making political statements in their crazy horror movies, because that's what they're trying to do in these movies. So, but one thing I want to do is talk about. I personally feel like Carpenter says something different in each one of his films, which makes him unique, even though he's making kind of the same genre films, and sometimes he's twisting the genre. Yeah. But what do you guys think is his biggest running theme? Is it like anti-capitalist? Is it anti-what? What is he trying to say throughout the majority of his movies?
I mean, I just always read them as paranoia, right? Like,
okay,
what's like
that's great.
Like what's like unseen, and I think that's the running theme, particularly like paranoia in the government, paranoia in people. The Thing is a movie about paranoia within like a contained group, like how, and these are all movies, and again, The Thing is a remake of 1950s film that I forget the title of it.
The Thing from Outer Space.
The Thing from Outer Space. There it is. Yeah, which in the 50s the whole idea was like nuclear. Like we're heading into a nuclear age, so we don't know who we can trust. Like, and that was like the Cold War. So I think he takes a lot of influence from that, and then he kind of puts it into a broader scope. So I think Halloween is a movie about paranoia, like in the community. The Thing is a paranoia, like science paranoia. You know what I mean? And all of his movies just are different extensions of that.
I think you can couple that with dread as well, because there's just a lot of impending doom, like just around the corner in each of his films, whether the characters actually know what's going on or not. And I think that's almost the scariest thing. Like you look at something like Halloween, where Laurie has no idea none of this shit's happening, but the second that the shit hits the fan and it all comes down on her, she's like, wait, my friends have been getting killed left and right. I think there's something really dark and twisted about that, and I kind of like go back and forth with which would be worse, like knowing that all this is like knowing, like in The Thing, like knowing that there's an alien presence and always looming about and being scared and not knowing who's who, or finding out all at once that your friends have been killed. And that comes into play in a bunch of different movies. I mean, The Fog is another one too, where it's just like something's looming about, but no one exactly knows what's happening.
It is, yeah.
Let's get into a little bit of his cinematic style. What is his continuous visual style? Because I feel like a lot of directors kind of adapt a certain type of camera work and camera movement. What do you think is the one thing that kind of string-alongs through all of his films?
I mean, definitely like longer takes is nice of him to do, because I'm a big fan of longer tapes. But I particularly love his lighting when it's like, especially during night, because it just looks so clean, and he's really good with shadows in a lot of movies. Like obviously Halloween, The Fog is a really good example. The Thing is an incredible example because of how dark that movie is, and especially when you're dealing with the cold environment. I think it's really interesting, especially like you have people, and I think this is a silly argument, but like even like the ending of The Thing, when people debate whether or not Keith David or Kurt Russell are the Thing in the end, and people are like, "Oh, you can see the breath in such and such as air. You can't really see it." They're both breathing air. Let's be honest, they really are. It doesn't matter who or who isn't the Thing. It's just a matter. It could be any of them. Right. But the fact that you can see that air being reflected more so on one person or the other. It's like, did they do that intentionally for people to theorize on that? Doesn't matter, because of how the surrounding area looks, and I don't know, just small little details like that.
I
you
like
know?
that, man. Especially the way they use flames in that, right?
Oh, yeah.
How like the actual real fire kind of creates the real lighting in
Right.
this, scene or shot.
Yeah.
That's really cool because there's flames throughout that entire movie, and
Yeah.
the fact that it's kind of used as a light source. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I like that.
No, I mean, I don't think Carpenter gets enough like credit for his precision, right? Like, I think he's a very precise filmmaker when it comes to like you talk about The Thing. I remember very distinctly, like, because I rewatched The Thing for a class, and one of the shots that really stood out to me was like he had the shot where like it was right when the dog got infected, so like the camera just like follows the dog, like, and it's literally a tracking
the
shot.
shadow.
Yeah. You see the shadow of the alien, but it's still like it's just so perfectly like. And then it's a tracking shot too, so the camera obviously had to be really low, pointing up. I don't know. It was just the way that sequence is set up, and even in things like They Live, when it could have been very easy for when he puts on the glasses for another filmmaker to just do like shaky cam or something wild with it.
It's
But
just a flat shot on like a billboard, and it's just so simple.
black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just gives it to you. And I think that's very precise. I think that's very direct and precise.
Yeah.
So.
My last question for you guys before we get into his filmography and we kind of run it down is rewatching these films. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I had a thought kind of going through this, and it's one of those things where I know John Carpenter's classic film director, inspired a lot of people. However, he's very famous and he's very 80s.
Yes.
Rewatching his films, do you guys think his films hold up all the way?
Oh, see, maybe
Because I was gonna say, man, sometimes I'm like, what was the intention of this? Does this hold up?
I think for like a much younger audience watching it,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a combination of like growing up with them and watching them now, because I do think they hold up really well. But it's also like a nice little touch of that era. There's for me there's Carpenter 70s and there's Carpenter 80s, and when he gets into his 90s is where he starts to drift away a little bit.
Right.
People may be fans of some of his movies in the 90s, but I think like those are the times that he really shined, and I think it's because of those decades of how I mean movies in general during the 70s and 80s are probably some of the best that we've ever seen, and I think that was just at his peak filmmaking. Definitely my favorite time, but again, I get it. I rewatched They Live about last week, and my girlfriend had never seen it, and I told her the concept. She's like, "Oh, that sounds cool," and she's like, "God, I hate the '80s." She's a total '90s girl, and she's just like, "Why everyone's so dressed like that?" I'm like, "That's the times,
Yeah.
But it's funny. It's funny how that thing.
What
but
about you?
she ended up liking it.
She liked it.
Yeah, she liked it. So.
Well, I can't really, you can't really like criticize effects like for if they hold up. I think because I think just effects. It's like
I don't think it's
a
effects
place
though.
of time.
By holding up, I don't mean effects, because I do feel like that's something you can quickly kind of push aside. I mean tone. I mean
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think the thing is like post. Like I think the thing hasn't even caught up.
Yeah,
like,
I
we're not
agree.
even caught up to
I
that point
agree.
yet,
The thing is like next level, bro.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
next level.
yeah.
That thing is still the nastiest shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But I meant like his other movies though. But
Yeah,
we'll
his
get
other
into
movies,
it once
I
we
think-
start naming them.
Yeah.
His first first feature film was Dark Star, which originally was a student film. See, he made this was originally just like a short student film, and he was able to get financing and money to make it like a feature film, like a commercial film. Have you guys seen Dark Star?
No.
Yeah.
I remember getting a top 100 science fiction movies of all time book, and Dark Star being in there.
Really?
I'm like, oh, okay, this seems strange. I think it was 100 sci-fi. I want to say that it was. I do know that it's a comedy. I think it's a comedy. Maybe I'm mistaken about that. I think it's a sci-fi comedy.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's one I need to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're gonna.
I'm a sham. I apologize to all you purists out there that haven't seen Dark Star.
I don't know, man. I've seen a little bit of it. If I'm being honest with you guys, I haven't finished it because it is kind of hard to find. It's the silliness is just pouring.
Okay, yeah.
It's just pouring out of it. But yeah, that's eventually what got him. And what's interesting about his career is kind of seeing where the budget goes. I believe Dark Star was made for $30,000, which is insane. Assault on Precinct 13 is his next movie.
Yeah, that one's rough.
And I know this is I think it's like an actual like adaptation of something. I forget if it was, but I think he was inspired by something else.
Okay.
Probably a short story. All of his movies are based on short stories.
Yeah, short story.
A lot of them I remember.
And I know this one was made, I think, for $90,000 when I was reading up on it.
That's so fucking awesome.
And this one didn't do well in the U.S., but apparently in London, because it premiered at the London Film Festival, it killed in London.
Oh, wow.
And that's when Carpenter was kind of like, he spent time in England.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what inspired him for The Fog, obviously, eventually later on. But it's interesting to see how different audiences kind of, I guess, back in 1976, London wanted to see some like bullets fly, man. I don't know. It's you never know what really is when certain countries are like, yeah, this is badass, and and the rest of the world is like, nah, man.
It's pretty. I mean, it's pretty brutal. It's a pretty violent movie, and it's been a while since I've seen it. I've only seen it a handful of times.
Yeah.
And then there was a crap remake for it.
There was
with Ethan Hawke.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
really,
Ethan Hawke, Lawrence Fishburne, John Leguizamo. God, I know too much about that one.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, it's pretty violent. Locked up in a police precinct. It's the last shift for that night, I think. They're closing it down, and bullets start flying. Yeah, it's been a minute, but I just remember the brutality of that movie. How violent it was. Yeah,
it's interesting too because you're coming from filmmakers who, during this time period, are probably not. I don't know. I just find it so funny, man. People like James Cameron, people like Coppola, people like John Carpenter, people who are very, very, very vocal against the war, against massive machine guns, and against all this shooting stuff, like a Cameron, like a Carpenter, and all these people who are pretty much anti-war and make like gunslingers, crazy gun shooting, kind of movies. So I always find that kind of fascinating to see.
I think everybody makes those movies.
I know, and I'm probably gonna do the same thing. If I make movies, I'm gonna have like 2 friggin' machine guns and guys shooting.
It's fairly early on in his career too.
Yeah.
It's like when you start making films, I think it's like you eventually just find your niche. You're not gonna hit a home run out right off the bat.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like the important aspect of Assault on Precinct 13, obviously, it's a showcase of talent, because with Dark Star, there's not much you can do with $30,000, but with a little bit more of a budget in Assault on Precinct 13, you're able to see a little bit of talent.
Yeah.
And so are studios, and so are investors, and that's how he got financing for Halloween, which came out in 1978. And Halloween is obviously his big claim to fame. It's very famously super low budget, and it basically cost no money to make. And it's Jamie Lee Curtis. It's his homie from USC Film School to play Michael Myers.
Nick Castle.
Yes.
Who was reprising his role for the new one.
I mean,
well, granted, there was like 5 people that played Michael Myers / I mean, there was one. Nick Castle played the Shape, and then there was other people that played Michael Myers.
Yeah,
so
because there is a difference. Yeah, for sure.
There's a huge difference.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm like evilly looking at the camera.
But Halloween, man, we just talked a little bit about it. It's one of the most impactful movies in the horror genre. It obviously is credited for almost creating the slasher genre, if not outright creating it. What is it about this movie that do you guys feel stands the test of time?
I think it's just the patience of it, allowing that dread and that paranoia you were kind of talking about just slowly build up, because in rewatching it, it's a lot of the stalking. You don't really know why. Is it because she put the keys in the old Myers home under the little what do you call it? The rug, whatever it is.
Doormat?
The doormat, yeah. Is it because she put that up there and he was there at the same time? Is that why he started following her around? Or is it just, you don't really know why? Because one of the reasons why I love that movie so much is because of how ambiguous it is. They eventually go into this dumb background behind Michael Myers, and it's not necessary. The point of that movie is very almost similar to Alien, where it's just it doesn't matter what his goal is or what he's trying to do. It's just the fact that he's there and he's going to kill you, and there's really no stopping it. It's the embodiment of evil. Donald Pleasance does a wonderful job as Dr. Loomis, just purely freaking out because he's the only one that knows what this person is capable of, and nobody wants to believe him. And when it all finally comes to, it's like, yeah, I want Loomis on my side, and that it's just a big inspiration. Like anything that I ever do will always have elements of that movie.
Yeah, and it's almost like kind of seeing what happens. I mean, this is a time period. Obviously, we're still living in a time period. I talked about it last week, RB3, where America is fascinated by the deranged, like with Manson and all these type of killers who are just known for being so evil to the point now that they're not considered human, right?
Right.
And this is a time period in America where America was fascinated by that. I mean, people were just obsessed with that type of stuff. Like, why are these people doing this? And evil is like your next door neighbor kind of stuff that they would promote on TV. Yeah. And the fact that a lot of it, I don't want to say a lot of it takes from it, but some of it takes from Psycho. Hitchcock's Psycho.
Yeah, which burped at the same time.
Yeah, it's one of those concepts of taking like what happens when this type of human being can use his psychotic nature and his power, basically, because he's a big dude, to just become inhuman and just take people out for the hell of it. Like you said, there's not really a clear reason why.
And what beautiful coincidence to have Janet Leigh do Psycho and then Jamie Lee Curtis to do Halloween. That's a family. That is a family right there. Yeah, I've always loved that, because Psycho, without Psycho we wouldn't have had Halloween. Without Halloween we wouldn't have the slew of other slashers in general.
Yeah, or horror films, or Carpenter horror films too.
Yeah.
What about you, RB3?
No, definitely. I mean, I agree with everything that Copster said, and I think I think that's the biggest part of it, is like you never know what's lurking in your own.
It's grounded, right? Compared to something like, because I grew up more with Jason. Friday the 13th is something that I would watch, but that's more supernatural in a sense. You feel the supernatural elements.
He becomes more supernatural.
It
starts off a little grounded, and then
I saw the supernatural ones.
And they literally go to space.
Those are the ones that I saw when I was younger. But the fact that this one is so much more, just a big psycho killer who's just killing people for fun.
And I think that's why it holds up. I'm sorry, as you pointed
out.
I'm going to cut
just
you
off.
Say
if you were cutting
me off.
But that's what keeps it grounded, is that it is a simple person going around killing people. Whether or not you want to believe that he is, supernatural, or just like this killing machine that's been, wanting to let out his anger for so long,
Sure.
Yeah, no. And I was going to ask you, Copster, because you did the Shape, obviously, which is inspired by Halloween.
Oh yeah.
So, when you and Cody were writing that together, like what piece of Halloween did you like see in that like really, like, did you want to embody in the short?
It was the pure ambiguity and like randomness of Michael Myers, because I think the series sort of loses track of that, and just kind of makes him this killer presence that just, I don't know, like they almost like give him a motive to do all the things that he did, and I just wanted a simple story. That's like the fortunate thing. I didn't have to write an entire film off of it.
Right.
I basically just, the way I structured it was, I'm going to write the prologue to a film that's never going to happen, and it was just how he was going to get his mask, because he's back in town, and that was sort of just like the basis of all of that, and I wanted to, not replicate, but sort of honor the way he shoots certain things, and that's somewhat done in the short film, but I can't do it on his level, but you take those inspirations and you do what you can with them, and I'm incredibly happy with the way it turned out. And it was so much fun making it, because there was moments that night when we were shooting, I'm like, fuck this, like, there's one shot in particular where Michael Myers is in the background and you can see him just barely there, and it's it's actually kind of bright on him, but it's a little bit darker on Grace, and Heather Grace Hancock, who was in the short film. And it's just like this, that's like everything that I wanted. Like, that was the shot. I love it. And I kind of take that from that, so, and I'm just a super big fan of the series. I when I went into that, I thought, let's do a Jurassic World scenario. Let's do this is a prologue for a fourth film that's never going to get made, and Halloween 2, and Halloween 20 years later are in continuity. Everything else is out the window. What can we do from that? 40th anniversary, got it, boom, and then kind of just generated from that.
I feel you.
Yeah,
so looking forward to the new one.
I am, yes.
Comes out next week.
Yes, I'm fortunate enough I get to see it early, because I begged and plead, because I did not want it to be spoiled. Haven't seen a trailer. Seen nothing.
Really?
Nothing.
That
I walked
trailer.
in. I'm hearing good things from people that I both respect and don't respect. No, I'm kidding. But
Respect and hate.
I've avoided as much as I can from like social media reactions. The closest thing I've gotten to seeing a trailer, I want to say I've actually edited a trailer reaction, but I've perfected not watching the trailer to edit those because they're so easy to do. But I walked in to go see The Predator, and as I was walking in, the Halloween trailer was playing. I'm like, nope. Right back the other way. So it sounded cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm incredibly excited. I'm very interested to see what they're going to do. I hope it saves the franchise, and I hope we get more slashes from it, to be honest. Not shitty slashes, like, people that care about this franchise, like the two guys doing it are they're comedy guys, and I think that's perfect. Like, Jordan Peele is one of the funniest motherfuckers on the planet, and he did one of the best horror films of the last few years,
True.
So I think this is also going to help a new wave of type of horror films. But that's also going to come with some faults as well. Sure. We're also going to see this trend, and it's going to be bad. But I think out of that badness, I think we're going to get some good gems here and there. So,
yeah, and it's crazy how this movie has, obviously we're talking about the 2018 one that's coming out next week, but how it's like stood the test of time as far as how much it has inspired. Yeah. And just in pop culture in general. I was just thinking about the stupid joke, which I still think is hysterical, in Baby Driver, when they were like, I told you to get Mike Myers.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, this is a Mike Myers mask. It's like, no.
Yeah. And that movie's going to fucking crush. Oh, it's going to crush so hard. But Michael Myers is such a pop culture icon now.
Yeah, and it's crazy how he has become like such a pop culture icon, and how it's inspired so much, and how just, the score.
Yes.
The theme.
The sound,
the fact that Carpenter's coming back for that to do it is really, really cool.
Yeah, that theme is still, like, you can play that to kids nowadays, and they would probably know what that is, even if they haven't seen the movie. Yeah. They would still be like, oh, yeah, that's the Halloween theme.
Right.
I've heard that before. They've made that into, like, hip-hop beats and, like, stuff like that. So the fact that theme is so iconic, it's up there with, other horror themes like
Jaws.
Psycho, Jaws. Like, those are the type of themes that bring in the atmosphere for, this crazy killer who's out to get you.
Yeah.
So, this movie has inspired quite a bit, and we'll keep talking about inspirations as far as John Carpenter, as far as his films go along. Speaking of which, we can move on to his next feature film, which is 1980s The Fog.
What? You're going to skip over the TV film he did, Elvis? I hear it's actually really great. I believe Kurt Russell plays Elvis.
Really?
I think so. Hold on. Let me just double check.
I can check that.
Did
Kurt Russell, yeah. Yeah, he does.
Really?
Oh, we'll talk about Kurt Russell.
I hear it's great.
I did. You know what? Somebody did say that Kurt Russell was the best Elvis. I heard that from somewhere. I don't know where I heard, but I guess that's from
That's
the John
crazy,
Carpenter
man.
shit. I didn't know that.
But The Fog. The Fog is what we're going.
Still like Val Kilmer's Elvis, by the way.
Okay.
And True Romance.
Starring Tom Welling, The Fog. No, I'm kidding. You guys remember that one? No?
No, I don't know. I don't get that reference.
2005, I think. Tom
Jesus
Welling
Christ.
did a remake. Shout out to Tom Welling.
Bro, why do you...
Smallville.
I feel like you mentioned
Smallville.
Tom Welling in every
I've never
episode.
mentioned it before.
Yes, you have, bro. In every show, in every episode. Tom
Either
Welling.
way, The Fog came out in 1980. It stars freaking John Carpenter's wife.
Yes.
Which he just recently married once they started making this film. Adrian Barbeau, I'm going to say.
Barbosa. Adrian Barbosa.
Yeah.
Inspired later for Pirates of the Caribbean.
Recently married, and then they were making this film. And as I mentioned before, John Carpenter was inspired by going to England and just seeing the enormous fog come over this town. And it's how creepy that actually is, and kind of the idea of like what's in that fog, and then saying it's ghosts. The idea of small town near the ocean, ghost pirates basically
haunting the town.
Kind of taking vengeance on the town. Just the concept itself is enough to make enough creepy elements to make it a pretty entertaining movie.
Yeah. I think like the use of fog in general is great. And again, it goes back to that kind of ambiguity. You do eventually see the pirates, but it's like what goes on in the fog, like what actually happens, you know? And I think that's one of the elements that work well in this movie. It's not one of my favorites.
Sure.
I like a lot of the visuals, again, like with shadows and how he is able to move the camera and light everything, especially towards the end in the church when
that church shot is great.
Fucking beautiful, and it's haunting.
And it's creepy.
Really, really creepy. Again, Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh's in it too.
Yeah.
Like it's got a really great cast, and I think that one kind of floats under the radar because he goes off to do something like Halloween, and then he does The Fog, and I think everyone was just like, oh, okay, cool, it's The Fog, it's no Halloween, so which is unfortunate because I think The Fog is pretty decent.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I was watching a little bit of behind the scenes for this one, and Jamie Lee Curtis was talking about how she was talking to John Carpenter about how she didn't really get much work after Halloween, and she was kind of disappointed in that, and how John Carpenter actually kind of helped her out by giving her this role and just kind of keep putting her in these movies and kind of gave her a staple into being kind of like the horror girl, the final girl type scenario as she keep coming up in these movies. So that's interesting too because that's what a lot of people don't realize when it comes to directors, and obviously we'll talk about Kurt Russell, how directors like to keep using the same actors and how directors like to elevate people they like, I guess is what it is. It's like, I really like you, man. I'm going to keep putting you in my movies and keep giving you a job and keep giving you money. Because a lot of people don't realize when you're in Hollywood and you're an actor, you're looking for that next gig every time. And it's like, if you don't find it, you're like, I did that cool movie 2 years ago, but I'm broke right now.
Yeah.
So the fact that, Carpenter not only wanted to make creepy movies, but wanted to help out his buddies, including Jamie Lee and including Kurt Russell. Yeah. But RB3, what's your connection?
Never seen it?
Never seen it.
Next.
This isn't the Frank Darabont movie. This is not The Mist.
The Mist.
There's a fog, and then there's
I do like The Mist. I do like The Mist.
Mist is really good, too.
Mist is good.
Yeah.
2007,
You
right?
should check out this one. Sounds about right. Yeah.
2007, yeah.
Yeah. Stephen King adaptation, which another John Carpenter movie, Christine. Is that the next one? Is that the next one?
No, it's not.
Oh, fuck. That would have been so hot, dude.
Yeah,
you're skipping over two big ones.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Yes.
Yeah, his next one is Escape from New York.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what's up.
People love this movie.
People love this movie in 1981. And I can't lie, guys. Every single Kurt Russell movie, except for maybe The Thing, I personally feel like it's a little bit over the top.
Okay. Well, this one,
including Escape from New York.
This one,
Escape from LA. Escape from LA is like next level.
I never even bothered. I never.
Escape from LA. They're like, there's some stuff in there where you're like, you're not taking anything seriously right now.
Right.
At least when it comes to premises, though, we get to see a little bit of what John Carpenter wanted to do with his premises,
right,
and how he was very much making statements. And the majority of his films from now on, I feel like from this point on, all of his films have some sort of political statement.
Yeah.
And Escape from New York is no different. I mean, the fact that it's just an island, Manhattan is an island now where it's a part of like this authoritarian America, dystopian.
Well, it's a giant prison. And you gotta think this came out during a time where this is set in New York, Escape from New York. Yeah, I think New York in the 1970s was like the most disgusting place like on the entire earth, right? Like you look at movies like Warriors, like what else is like 1970s?
Gangs of New York.
Not Gangs. The Taxi Driver. And like all the movies that portray New York during that time. Even you look at movies like now, reflected back then, like The Get Down or other movies that reflect the Boardwalk Empire. Not Boardwalk Empire is like 20, so I shouldn't even say that. But anyway, like 1970s New York was just a shitty place.
Yes.
So and that's where John Carpenter kind of drew the inspiration for doing this. It's like, okay, this is all so trash already because of the corruption, because of everything. Let's just like overly emphasize, like this is the future that New York is going to be or whatever. And
it's also him having a lot of fun with it as well. Like this is like Kurt Russell's best like John Wayne impression, basically. Just like in a completely different setting, and that's what I appreciate a lot with this movie. It's not my favorite either. I think I like the music more than I like the actual movie, and I think Donald Pleasance is great in it as well. I just love almost everything Donald Pleasance does. He plays the president in this one, but it almost like going back and like when I first saw this, it very much into video games. It feels very much like a video game premise. His name's Snake. So it's like I'm thinking like Metal Gear Solid, So
was it? I think Metal Gear Solid was like
probably So that's like as I was like playing those and I'm like watching the movie, I'm like, oh, I see the dots, I see the connections together. So
and it's very much him inspired by, I wouldn't say video games, but like comic books. Yes. I feel like that's him inspired by the comic book genre and how it's very much like dystopian comic booky type of genre.
With the like Statue of Liberty, like like in the middle of the
yeah, it's very
of the city.
it's very comic booky, and it's the way it's spread out and the way it's done artistically as well. I mean, it's one of those things too where the main character is like the most over the top.
And I love that
like
for that.
badass, like this guy's Black Ops, Purple Hearts, man,
the ultimate man's
yeah,
man.
Yeah,
gun-toting,
man spreading the movie. No, it's not.
Man, it's just mansplaining the entire time. No, actually,
I think that's the thing. I think that's literally all men. Yeah.
Oh no, literally. But I think it's funny that you mentioned John Wayne. I think he takes a lot from like the John Wayne of like the stoic, like heroic. You know, like
this is kind of like a Western in a way.
Yeah.
It is kind of like has that Western vibe of like this outside gunslinger kind of coming to a different town. And it's
just murdering people.
Man. And it's Adrian Barbeau is also in this movie.
Yes.
His wife is in this movie.
So
his wife during this time is in this movie. And it kind of started off this Kurt Russell, John Carpenter relationship where he was playing sort of similar characters, and he became kind of like a household name due to John Carpenter. And I was watching an interview with Taika Waititi, and he talked about how he feels like Kurt Russell is like the best action star. And the reason why he said that was he says he's the best action star because he's not bulging muscle or Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's like this everyman, manly dude who like could be like your next door neighbor type manly guy, where he's just like a really cool, badass guy, but all his motives and all his inspirations are simple.
Yes.
Whether like in The Thing, it's a simple motivation, or in Big Trouble in Little China, it's a simple motivation. And that's what Taika Waititi was talking about with Kurt Russell. And Kurt Russell during this time, man, this is his time period where he was in the 80s and he was kicking ass. And eventually he go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, I mean, that could lead us right into The Thing, is where like every introduction he has to like these movies, like there's something to him. There's something for us to like about him.
Sure.
And I think that's part of just Kurt Russell's charm. And a good combination of John Carpenter directing him as well, because the two of them have worked together. They worked previously on Elvis, and he brought him back for Escape from New York. Now The Thing, there's just like always something to say about his characters, not just John Carpenter's, but just Kurt Russell overall. There's always something. Even if you don't like his character, there's something you can always take away from him, and that's just such a great thing for an actor to do. Not to just he gives it his all every single time. And one of my favorite characters is his character in The Thing, and his first introduction is him playing chess. And he's just like, fucking bitch. And he just fucking pours the whiskey into it, destroying his computer just because he lost. Like, that almost says so much about his character without even really saying anything.
Right, and and that I think that immediately sets up the greater theme of fear and paranoia in science, right? Fear and paranoia in technology, and not technology as an extent of science, right? Like how we fear what we don't understand necessarily. I think that's what fuels a lot of this movie, and I think that's why it's so interesting having this like crew of. What are they doing down there anyway?
They're like a research facility.
Facility.
Most of them are out there for research. Like, I'm blanking on his name, but Kurt Russell's character, he's just the helicopter pilot. There's a couple other characters there that are kind of just there as like workers. Yeah. But for the most part, they're researchers.
Right. But it's very funny. The people who you see are the scientists. Usually are the ones all the scientists in this movie are like usually the bad guys, like not the bad guys, but the more assholey type characters, and they even have to lock up the other guy in the other house who's one of the scientists. But
Wilford Brimley,
exactly, and it's like it's like this. The whole movie is like this idea of like the working man overcoming. What the science is or what's supposed to, you know what I mean? So it's very interesting that that's how the film opens to kind of establish his position on that versus, and once he starts encountering this stuff,
It also comes back later on in the film. You can kind of see like, okay, this guy, he's maybe an everyday kind of dude. He's a helicopter pilot. He's got no patience. He's losing his thing. He's not getting his way. Is that going to play later? Yeah, because he ends up shooting someone in the face. And then you kind of go along with him as he sort of learns to be, he kind of takes everyone hostage. Everyone's against him for a good portion of the movie, and he has to take control of it. And, that just adds more to, how great Kurt Russell is.
Yeah.
You are afraid of this movie.
Oh, yes.
Did you end up rewatching it?
Yes, I did, and
Yes.
it's the whole time I'm like this the whole movie, just cringing the entire time because this is a movie that I'm telling you guys, especially as a kid, but even now, man, I'm telling you, when it comes to special effects, and I know I'm gonna sound like an old man saying this, but nothing scares you more than something you feel the texture of. When you can say that looks like skin, and I know that's not digital, and I feel like this time, 1982, with The Thing is a showcase. It's a showcase on special effects makeup.
Oh, yeah,
and
for
it's
sure.
not just a showcase. It's probably the greatest special effects makeup movie of all time. I personally feel that because it shows you the most disturbing images, and it makes you feel like all of those disturbing images are somehow real. Like if I reached out and touched that, it would be I could feel it, and it's disgusting, and I would be vomiting everywhere probably because it's so nasty and disgusting. This movie and The Fly is the two movies that I feel
Yeah.
that just feel so.
Pretty similar.
Both came
pretty
out
close.
around the same time.
Yeah.
They did, yeah.
I think it was
And it's-
82 for the
This is 82. I think The Fly's 84, maybe.
okay, yeah. So
It might
maybe
be.
around the same.
But
area.
David Cronenberg was a guy who took a lot of influence from John Carpenter as
Yeah.
well. So
And it just goes to show for me personally rewatching this movie, right? Because it's one of those things where I just talked about how some things may not hold up, and you said The Thing does, and I agree The Thing does, because rewatching this movie, I can still go into a movie or go into a show or go into any kind of horror aspect, and if I see digital blood or if I see digital CGI gore, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect me. But when I see this kind of gore and this kind of blood, it makes me feel like I'm gonna throw up.
Right.
Yeah.
And it really is like the movie. You know, like I said, it's a good story. It follows along the human spirit as far as like when they're diving into paranoia, where
Yeah.
you're so paranoid now to the point where it's like nothing is safe, right? But at the end of the day, it's a showcase of special effects makeup, and it's a showcase of horror in the setting, because I really feel like this setting, man, and I know a lot of movies are doing it now. I just saw Hold the Dark on Netflix. But it's the cold setting, man. Nothing is more terrifying than being in the middle of nowhere, but the middle of nowhere is freezing ass cold.
Yeah.
I mean, those types of movies that are like horror movies set in like the middle of nowhere in the freezing ass cold, like this, like maybe A 30 Days a Night, like
Yes.
those kind of movies that are just like this even more terrifying.
yeah, because it's like it's not like, okay, maybe if you're in the middle of the desert,
Yeah.
maybe you can survive for a little bit.
Yeah.
You got it gets pretty cold in the desert. You're from Arizona, so you know what's up.
It does.
But when it's below zero,
Yeah.
there's nothing you can do.
Oh.
You cannot survive it.
It's
But
way worse.
And then you throw on top of the special effects, there's also this quiet clue like mystery of like, okay, who is the thing? You know,
Yeah.
everyone likes to say it's a who done it kind of thing. You know. And you're never really sure. And that's one of the greatest things about it, because they never fully spell it out until, like, boom, it gets caught, and it has no other way to defend itself than just coming out and revealing itself. And what it reveals is the most vile, like, disgusting, putrid-fested thing that you could possibly imagine, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
The effects work, Rob Button. I know Stan Winston did one. He did the dog creature, but I think I did Rob Button. Maybe fact check me on that one. But it's great all around. Till this day, it's similar. Like it makes me miss this sort of work, because we don't really get it a lot. And when we do, it's like it's nice. You know, I can't even really remember the last time we've got like nice creature effects. You know, it's so easy. It's so easy to do it on a computer now. But definitely like on this level, like movies these days are all about like the nostalgia. Like when Star Wars came back, like, yeah, we're gonna use practical effects and puppets and all this stuff. It's like, when is that craze gonna happen with horror films? Maybe I'm just not thinking of one. Maybe there is one out there where they actually do that. But like, I want to see this level of horror and grotesqueness. I don't even know if that's a word, but I'm gonna say it. I want to see this kind of thing come back, because it makes it feel so real. It really, really does. Like when you see these things, like that dude's arms are getting bitten off by a fucking creature, you know? And it pains me, like when you see so there was a prequel for this film. It's just called The Thing. A lot of people mistaken it for a remake. It essentially is a reboot / remake, but it takes place right before this movie. They shot that movie with practical effects in mind. Like, you look at behind the scenes photo, you see like a practical monster. They wanted to not replicate, but they wanted to honor what that first movie did. studio ripped that apart. They hated it. They hated how it looked, and they made everything CG, and it just looks awful. If they kept the practical and they made it work, maybe it would have been somewhat decent. But the effects really hindered it, and it sucks you out of it, and it makes you realize you're not really watching something that's real. And every time I watch The Thing, it's like, that is a fucking alien. Yeah. That is a real alien.
I feel like 50, 60 years from now, we're probably going to get to the point now where CGI is like, yeah, that looks real. But now, I just still don't see it. I mean, I just saw Venom, and Venom is a perfect example of like, it doesn't work. It just doesn't, the CG, scary.
Yeah, Rob Botton, sorry.
It really just doesn't work. Yeah, I mean, shout out to him, because I really feel like this is his movie as much as it is John Carpenter's movie, because it really is a showcase on special effects. I mean, I don't know if you rewatching this movie, if you felt the same way.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely, I think that's the biggest thing, is how the practical still holds up. And, it's even more horrifying the way that they put the faces on the people, too. And, and I think the way Carpenter constructs the scenes to leading up to these big moments when the effects come up is also just as important, because I think, the reveal of that special effects, of the big alien at the end is fine, but that doesn't work without having the heating up of the wire and like testing the blood. That is what makes the creature stand out even more, because I think in a movie where you don't have the suspense, you don't have the build up, it's just a ugly blob that comes on screen, is not going to be as effective. But he, it's great that he both incorporates the practicality of it, but it's like the Spielberg effect in Jaws, like using it scarcely and building up the anticipation for it. Ultimately ends up making it a lot more scarier.
Yeah, and it's not just like a shameful like monster thriller. It's a lot deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's a lot deeper. And when people sort of realize what this movie is, it's like it's so much more than that. Like you set up the paranoia. Like paranoia for me is like is a great running theme for everything, because I'm a paranoid human being in general. Like you two could be aliens right now, and I'd be scared to fuck. Like I'm worried right now. But when you take those elements and then you put it, you take the idea of paranoia as like, okay, I'm gonna make a movie about paranoia, about people not trusting each other. Like what level of extreme will people go to? And on top of that, I'm gonna put a monster in there that can assimilate and mimic human beings, and then you put it all together and you get this like classy kind of like grotesque monster. Like what other movies is going to be this violent and grotesque and be like, this is a renowned film?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've always kind of thought of the thing of really, I mean, honestly, I think it really is like a Hitchcock sci-fi movie, like in a certain extent, because all Hitchcock movies are about who can you trust, who can you not trust, who's around the corner, and this movie exemplifies that, like, and just like it goes full out. And I think that's what makes it. That's what makes it for me.
It's a damn shame too, because I feel like this is his peak. Like this is like
oh yeah,
like this is like top level John Carpenter. The movie did shitty.
Yeah,
nobody saw this movie.
Not a lot of people. And the people who did
was way too ahead of his time.
I was watching the behind the scenes, and the people who did, apparently the critics hated this movie. Hated it not just because they thought it was a bad movie.
They just thought it was a gore fest.
They hated the fact that it was so deranged and so disgusting. That's why they hated it. And I was like, wow, because critics nowadays would love this shit.
It's technically considered a cult classic.
And it's interesting because I thought of
classic.
I thought of it as like the fact that critics nowadays would love this disgusting type.
Are you kidding me? This would win Best Picture. If it came out.
They would love it. But critics back then were like, not in my America.
Well, back then that was the Reagan era.
It was.
So it was a lot more positive.
It was a positivity. It was kids loving it. It was E.T. This
came out the same year as E.T.
It did, and it was that kind of vibe where it's like aliens are here to bring love and American values.
And
it's like no.
If you want to see your loving alien movie, go watch E.T. If you want your dirty, deranged aliens, come check this one out.
Right, but you see the two movies that came out during that time, Star Trek and E.T. did really well in 1982. But then The Thing and Blade Runner, both really dark movies.
Because Blade Runner's boring.
But I don't know about that. But those are two. But I think most people highly regard Blade Runner and The Thing higher than E.T. and Star Trek too, in my opinion. I think, but I think they just hold up. They speak to our times more than those movies did.
Well, I really do feel like between this time period, the entire 1980s of John Carpenter's career, it's just a showcase of just how deranged he can get.
Yes.
The next movie we have is 1983's Christine, another horror movie based on Stephen King, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Car
written,
Comes Alive.
It's the novel is of the same name, right?
Yes. I think
so, yeah.
Okay. What do you guys think of this movie? Do you guys have a connection to this one? Because I got to be honest, I don't think I've seen this.
I've
one.
never seen it.
Got it.
No, I think that came out around the time. I actually don't really know how people feel about it, but I think that came around the time where just Stephen King works were being pumped out left and right.
Yeah.
I mean, Shining was like such a big thing.
When was the Pet Cemetery? Was it 87? 80?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel like that's around this time.
Whether or not it was like during that kind of like,
it was during the splurge. It was definitely during the splurge because there was, I think this one, and then there was also there was another Stephen King, not Pet Cemetery, but there was one that came in between The Shining.
Thinner, maybe
something. I don't know.
Thinner might be the 90s. I'm not too sure.
But it was just because The Shining was such a big hit, everybody wanted to cash in on that. But I particularly find this one interesting for me at least, is because even though it's a spiritual thing about self-driving car or whatever. I think weirdly enough, the aesthetic speaks more to this lasting impact because it kind of it dives deep into that 80s like car, how that like kind of car, a cool car, like kind of aesthetic that a lot of people had in those 80s movies, and we kind of see translated. What was what was that one horror movie that came out recently that was like with the STDs was like the
It Follows.
It follows.
Yes.
I think It Follows
Similar
is something
like
that takes from that tone, from that like ethereal kind of, you're not really knowing, what's behind it, what's behind you, what's around the corner.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think Christine actually is built up a little bit of a cult following. I know for
I think a lot of people generally enjoy it, and it's weird for me because I'm a big Stephen King fan, and I love John Carpenter. It's just, I don't know, that story never really interested me.
Yeah,
to read it. Perry Nemiroff was just telling me that she just finished the book and she she loved it. But I don't know. It's just I'm not a car guy. Like I know Stephen King's a big car guy. Maybe John Carpenter's a car guy too. So I should check it out.
Yeah,
I feel like it comes from that time period where people were.
Cars.
Really into cars, man.
I just don't care for
George
cars.
Lucas.
Yeah, Lucas was big into cars.
Yeah.
George Lucas was so big into cars. The next one was Starman.
Yeah, I also don't like Stars.
1984.
Never saw this one.
I haven't seen this one.
I haven't seen this one. I don't like men either.
You know what's funny?
Disgusting human beings.
Yeah, man. It's all bad.
I know.
All of us.
Anything with back in 1984, this was a time period where not Stephen King. I was going to say Stephen King. John Carpenter's managers and agents were actually telling him that all his stuff was a little bit too dark and too twisted.
Yeah, so he goes a light and friendly
and he
route.
he tried to do a much more romantic.
That's probably why I haven't seen it.
Sappy romance type movie.
Not a horror film. Oh, okay.
That didn't do too well. So his next big one was obviously 1986, Big Trouble in Little China. Have you guys recently rewatched this movie?
Yeah, I recently rewatched this movie. God,
this
freaking so fucking good
movie.
This movie's the fucking best,
dude.
This movie's
I can't lie, man.
This movie's so baller, dude.
I was
this
gonna say,
fucking good.
If I'm being honest, this entire movie, I am cracking up this whole movie.
And
the whole movie is like a comedy to me.
Like, oh no, for sure. Yeah, no.
I'm like, this guy is going after his truck after he's seen all this crazy shit.
And he's just like, he's just accepting it.
Yeah.
He's just flat out accepting it.
Yeah.
And the one of the funniest scenes is when he's stuck in the wheelchair and he's just screaming as it's falling down this incline. But also, this movie's so ahead of like the casting. This is a predominantly like Asian cast, and now it's like it's funny because like rewatching and then like Crazy Rich Asians, Awkwafina hosting SNL. It's like oh yeah, if let's diversify the shit up, and it's like. You see what Carpenter was doing? Like, it's pretty, I mean, this is a pretty diverse cast here.
Yeah.
Obviously, aside from the white man, Kurt Russell.
Sure.
But,
the white savior.
Yeah.
Saving the day.
Yeah, but it's very engraved into the Chinese culture.
Yeah.
And it's so rich with all of that.
Yeah.
And you on top of you spin all this, like, fantasy, magical stuff into the mix. And it's just so good.
It's great, man.
Yeah.
It's great, too, because I really feel like his character is just the embodiment of, like,
another John Wayne type character.
Yeah, another John Wayne, but like another like very like all American,
American
type
man,
dude, blue collar, driving his truck, like big American type dude. And I think that kind of again grounds the movie. It's such a fantastical movie, but it grounds it with Kurt Russell's character being such a relatable type guy, and such an easily rootable type
so
guy.
Likable.
He's so easy to root for him because you're like, oh, I like this guy. He's just wanting to drive his truck around and just do his thing, and it's still great how he interacts with the rest of the characters because he talks to them like they're just his buddies and his friends.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my biggest takeaway from this movie because it's interesting seeing because a buddy of mine back at work when I used to work with this friend of mine. This is like his all-time favorite movie, and he's like, "You have to see this movie." So I watched this thing recently. Actually, it was like a few years ago for the first time. And when I did, I was telling him, "I'm like, bro, this is insane. This movie's ridiculous."
Yeah, it takes like that Carpenter extreme to like the next level. It's probably like one of his most out there movies, but it also like it keeps it grounded in a certain set. Like he establishes that world and he makes it feel sort of fantasy from the very beginning, and you just kind of accept everything that's going along because you're following Kurt Russell's character from the very beginning, and he's that audience viewpoint member where you're just following
what
along.
Is going on.
You're learning along with him,
and
as he accepts it, you're like, okay, I accept it too, and it's because everything around him just works so well. Kim Cattrall's great in the movie.
Yeah, once we meet, what's his freaking name? What's his name?
Okay,
the main character, the old guy with a hat. I forget his name.
I haven't revisited this movie recently,
anyways,
guys,
once we meet his character, and we see how over the top he's playing his character, it's amazing.
Lopan? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
James Hong.
Yes. Once we meet his character, man, and he starts like talking, and it's oh my god, it's ridiculous, it's crazy,
it's so good
when he starts doing his little finger thingy.
It's so fucking creepy.
My god,
yeah. No, it's just the initial like when he's like driving down. It's just so this huge hunky truck is like going down this tiny little alley, and then this just like giant Chinese gang fight just starts breaking out of nowhere.
What Raiden comes out?
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. It starts off with like a gunfight, and then it starts into like a hand-to-hand combat, and then all of a sudden these magical wizards just start jumping up out of nowhere. Yeah. You're like, what the fuck is going on? And he's saying the same thing, and it's just they get kind of swept up into this huge little fantasy. It's just like the wrong place, wrong time kind of thing. And like had they gotten to the airport sooner, or if they gotten to their peeps a little bit or later, maybe the things would have been different. But the fact that they went right then and there, it's just wonderful.
And the fact that he's doing it just wearing like the tiniest little tank top too is like the funniest thing ever.
It's really great.
His like pecs are like basically coming out because the tank top goes to like down here, like on his side. I don't know. It's just goofy. It's
this
so
movie
goofy
bombed too, though. This movie didn't do good. Yeah, I think the budget was like 20-something million, and I think like it didn't make its budget back. I think
crazy,
it was like 10 million or 11 million.
What's the name of his truck in this movie?
Oh, I don't remember. What
I forget.
Does he have a name for the truck?
Yeah, he does. Something
Susan?
Express.
I don't know. I'm just kidding.
The Something Express. I forget what it is.
I'm pretty sure I should know that.
1987 was The Prince of Darkness. Have you guys seen this one?
I actually just watched this for the first time not too long ago. Yeah, because
like
I was, y'all told me, we're gonna do John Carpenter. I was like, all right, I'm gonna rewatch some of these things, and I'm like, okay, what's the one that I haven't seen that I like? What sounds interesting? And it was this one. It's fucking weird.
Yeah,
it's so weird, and I appreciate the patience that this movie has. It follows like these group of physicists who Donald Pleasance plays a priest, and follows them where they shack up in this kind of old abandoned church where earlier in the film a priest dies and kind of like has this box and unlocks it and gives I keep wanting to say Loomis. Gives Donald Pleasance a key for this like giant, what's discovered to be this giant batch of like
I remember this
goo.
Movie. I've seen it, but I don't remember everything.
And it's like this big batch of goo,
and it's like the green, and it's swirling around.
Like swirling around, and it starts taking people over. It's not really zombies, but they kind of turn them into these like drones where people are like kind of surrounding them. It's like these demonic things happening, and all these researchers come to this facility and they all start getting taken over one by one, and it's like he takes similar elements of like Halloween and The Thing into some of this like weird supernatural sort of vibe that the movie has.
Sure,
and it's okay. Yeah. It's all right. Yeah, I liked it. I liked, again, it's like I liked his music more so than I liked the actual movie. But not many people are like known in the cast. His partner in Big Trouble Little China, God, what's his name? I think his name was Wang in the actual movie.
Yeah.
Dennis. It's like Dennis Dunn. It's something Dunn.
Dennis Dunn. Yeah.
Dennis Dunn. Yeah, he returns and he's in this movie. Who I actually really liked in the movie. And I liked him in this one. Like the main character is kind of like generic man, and he has like a relationship with a woman. And they it's funny because they're all college students, and they get they're like, oh yeah, you're all getting tasked for this assignment over the weekend where you get to stay over the night at this church and try to find out what this goo is. And then kind of shit hits the fan. They're stuck in there, like a bunch of homeless. Alice Cooper, the great musician. He's like one of the lead. He's like one of the lead zombies, if you will, that are like preventing them from leaving. And then they start spitting in each other's mouths, and then they get taken over. It's essentially. I'm pretty sure it's like essentially Satan. Like at first I was like, oh, is this like some kind of vampire or whatever? But it's like his like kind of upbringing coming into the real world, and they eventually just kind of have to stop it from happening, or else the world's fucked.
Yeah,
it's creepy imagery though. Some great creepy imagery in this movie. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, again, I think I've seen bits of it too. I remember the priest, and I remember the weird supernatural elements. Yeah, I'll definitely check this one out.
I'd say check it out, Ep54 too.
Yeah, check that one out.
Or don't.
They Live is 1988.
That's what I do know about.
They Live has probably the most what is it? Not subtle, I guess is the word to use. The most unsubtle.
Purposely unsubtle.
Purposely unsubtle type movie that Carpenter has. I would say it is. It's very much the most like we get what you're trying to do right at the start of the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's Roddy Piper.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Man, yeah, it's crazy, and it's him and who's
Keith David.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
9-minute fight scene.
That's
magnificent fight scene. Yeah.
That's right. It's like a freaking 5.5 minute
it's so
fight
long.
scene.
I was showing I showed my girlfriend for that the very first time. She's like, okay, really? I'm like, just keep watching. She's like, well, she's like, can they wrap this up? We're like, no, that's the point. It's awesome. Yeah.
I was gonna say after seeing UFC 229.
Oh yeah.
These guys would be like,
this is nothing. This is nothing comparison. Nothing. But yeah, not so subtle hints.
Not so subtle, man. No, it's very much a statement against capitalism.
Yes.
Against the status quo.
Against the elites. Well, I think
the elites.
Yeah, I mean, I think this movie is almost like
the one percenters.
Yeah, I think this movie.
The rich.
I think definitely this movie is saying a lot of the things that filmmakers are trying to say now.
In that way, it is ahead of its time.
Yeah.
But this one is not subtle.
No.
At least now it's like they're trying to be a little more subtle.
I think when you throw in the element that there are aliens that have taken over, who knows how long, and they're kind of manipulating the world. I think that's just there's something great about that. I think for the time, I think if this movie came out now, it probably would have been panned. It's like, okay, we get it, but it's not taken too serious. You're having fun with it. There's a comedic element to it, to where he's not trying to make this like auteur film, like he's actually like he's making a statement, but he's also poking fun at the fact, especially it's like when he's reading the magazines and it's like consume, recreate, procreate, like all these different words and verbiages that are so like iconic now. Obey.
The fact that that's like an actual thing now.
Yeah. So. And people love, and that's what I think is so funny about this movie. I think this movie is not only like, it's a satire in the sense that it's satirizing how TV and media and image controls us, right? It's all about image because he puts on glasses.
Yeah.
It's like he's seeing the truth, for the first time, and I think that's why a TV network is such an important location for him to shoot up, obviously too. But like how that's the way that people are consuming information. I think
sure,
and I think that's what makes it a very like relevant, especially in today's time when we do have the 24 hours news cycle, when we do have a media that's not necessarily as honest as some, but then we still have a lot of unhonest players outside of the media. And, when we talk about, if we want to talk about politics or government or even things like, I don't know, because I think this movie touches on like a little bit of like religion to a certain extent too, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea of being like under the control of something and feeling that you're, feeling that that's part of it. I think that's why I think that The Matrix almost takes directly from this movie.
Interesting.
In terms of the concept of control and how do we lose control. But then I feel like this one, is almost, I feel like this one, when we talk about it being cheap, I feel like it being cheap is kind of the purpose, right? Like, it's an outsider movie to begin with.
Right.
Whereas I feel like The Matrix is more of a like big budget expenditure of it, but this is more of like an independent outsider.
This is a cheap movie. Like it was only like $3 million.
Yeah.
And it's
Hey, you could tell.
And it's totally kind of like a B movie. It's very slapsticky, kind of
very
goofy, self-aware.
There's almost like 3 different movies in this one.
Sure.
He's like when you start out with Piper, he's kind of down on his luck. He's practically homeless, and then you sort of like get into this small little homeless world, and then it's like as if like he's just trying to live his life, do the best that he can, and he stumbles upon this like sci-fi adventure that he didn't really ask for.
Sure.
And then from that, it goes from him learning about it and him trying to not necessarily expose it, but he's dealing with it. And then the final act of the movie is him like helping the resistance like expose it, and it turns into this just giant action set piece that just doesn't stop, which is great. Like, and I love like subverting your expectations like that, where you think it's going one way, but then it shifts completely different. Because like imagine, and this is in a couple of Carpenter movies, like imagine if you didn't like know that aliens have taken over, and like you're watching this for the first time and you're like, okay, we're just following this guy, like who are they live, like what is this all about? As soon as he puts on the glasses, you realize like, wait, what the hell, what is this all about? It's like
looking.
yeah, exactly.
And the visual style too. I mean, you guys mentioned it beforehand, like the black and white, the way it's used, the way when he puts on the glasses is so different than when he takes them off. It's very
Black and white is the truth. When people say we're looking in the black and white world, that's authenticity, and that's where I think him putting on those glasses and seeing how and exposing the world for how it really is. I think even goes beyond what this movie's trying to say on a micro level. On a macro level, I should say. As outside of the big level, it's like a small. His individual journey is self-discovery too, right?
Sure.
He's trying to find who he is, and how he can contribute to society because he's down on his luck. I think that's why we talked about how Kurt Russell's like the everyman action hero. I don't think this movie could afford Kurt Russell at this time. But then they got Roddy Piper, who kind of embodies that same kind of energy.
That's so true.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily needed. Like you don't really need like a giant action star. You just need someone that can kind of like holds their own and has enough charisma to keep us interested in why like we're following this character.
Yeah,
for sure. And now we get into 90s.
90s Carpenter.
John Carpenter. Well, as far as I'm just gonna wrap it up with, which one of these 90s movies kind of stands out for you guys the most?
Well, like as
90s and 2000s, because there's one more in 2000.
I never got into Village of the Damned, like it's vampires, right? I'm pretty sure it's vampires. I'm not sure.
No, Village of the Damned is 95, Vampires is 98.
No, I'm saying like it's Village of the Damned's vampires, a vampire story. Because I know that there's another version of Village of the Damned.
Oh, okay.
I'm not too sure, but it like when I was going back and forth whether what movie I wanted to watch that I haven't seen, it was between Prince of Darkness or In the Mouth of Madness, and I was gonna go towards Mouth of Madness because I like Sam Neill, but I never got around to it. The one that actually, and people maybe could kill me for it, but like Ghost of Mars, I know this is his 2000s work, but like out of the ones that we have, the rest is the one I can relate to the most because I remember watching this movie a lot when I was younger.
Oh yeah,
and it is so bad. Yeah, but I fucking love it for some reason. I mean, I'm always a fan of like a group of people in a situation trying to survive something. Yeah, and that was like the quintessential. This is like when I was playing Legos a lot. Like I recreated this with Legos all the time. Of just all these space cops on Mars, like getting attacked by some kind of like demon possession thing, and the Alice Cooper lookalike just shouting out the one main villain. Everyone's dressed up like Gwar. Like it's like so metal, and like the music's so bad. I hate it. I hate his music in this movie, but there's something about it. It's a big, huge guilty pleasure of mine.
Sure, absolutely. What about you, RB3? Out of these movies,
I haven't seen any of these except for Escape from LA.
What do you think about Escape from LA?
No, it's not good. It's not an honorable one, but I do think it's dope that he took it kind of was a little bit of a commentary on the LA riots to a certain extent, right? Like how New York was kind of this trash state, in that sense. When it comes to the West Coast, it's a different kind of boiling pot, So
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think this is his time period when he was getting very much like, I'm an over-the-top director. I might as well be over the top. Like, he was very much still stuck.
Vampires is pretty tame. Vampires is all right. It's not too... I mean, James Woods is James Woods in the movie, now. Say what you will about him, But I thought I kind of enjoyed that one.
It's not bad. I remember Vampires because it's the one that I'm probably closest connected to.
Yeah.
Just because it's got vampires in it.
Yeah,
and that's the connection I have towards anything horror is vampires. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, John Carpenter becomes a very self-referential director during this time period, and he still probably is. Mm-hmm. For now, I think he's just focused on
his music. He's really focused on his music. Yeah. He honestly, came out with. He's got like two. I think 2 albums now. What was it? Lost Tapes. Something like that.
He loves it, man. He loves doing that stuff.
That's great. Yeah, he performs too. Yeah. Like he's going around performing. He's going on like a tour with just his own music, which is cool. It's like, he's still being creative. I'm not sure what the future is like because he's pretty old. I don't know what the future is like for him in actually filmmaking. The last movie he did was The Ward with Amber Heard. I never bothered seeing because it just didn't, it didn't really pique my interest.
Sure.
But I've kept up with his music. Check out Vortex. That's a really good song.
Nice.
And he's coming back to do the score for Halloween 2018, which is really, really great. I would love to see like him try to return to his kind of filmmaking. I don't know if he wants to anymore. Maybe he's done his thing. Like, despite maybe him sort of fizzling out in his career towards the end, you can't deny that this man has like changed the game in so many different ways, and I will always respect that.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to John Carpenter.
John Carpenter. Check him out. YouTube.com/John Carpenter. I don't know if he has a YouTube channel.
Fingers crossed for Halloween 2018. I'm excited for it. Even though I'm not the biggest Halloween fan or the biggest horror fan, I'm still pretty pumped for it.
They're doing what they do so well in the Halloween franchise. They ignore canon.
That's what you got to do.
Doing a direct sequel to the first movie, which gets me really pumped. They could do so many different things.
All these franchise movies are doing these days.
That's true.
Like just skipping over it. What was the one that just did that?
Wasn't Predator did that?
Oh, Predator.
No, Predator acknowledged.
Oh, that's true.
Predator
You're right.
the same thing.
It acknowledged Predator 2 at least.
But it didn't acknowledge Alien versus Predator.
Didn't acknowledge Alien versus Predator or Predators, to be honest.
You can't really.
That's true.
That
because
one.
it's like another planet.
Yeah.
So, thanks for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was a lot of fun.
It was great.
Talking about John Carpenter.
I need to see more.
He's made a ton of movies, so sorry if we didn't get to all of them, guys. But either way, thank you so much for joining us on the Meaning of Podcast. And for the Meaning of Podcast, I'm Ace.
This is RB3.
Copster, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are peacing out, guys. Peace out. Have a good one.
Deuces.